One of the major talking points to emerge from UFC 274's explosive night of fights, or at least its explosive night of lightweight showcases, was the standout performance of Michael Chandler. A major narrative to come out of all of this is the idea that Chandler has been one of the greatest UFC signings of the era, a capture by Dana White and his team that is paying off in more ways than we ever would have guessed. But to understand and fully appreciate the impact that Chandler has had, both on the UFC and his own legacy, it is really necessary to take a moment to see where he was when he left Bellator. For years, Chandler had been quite well known, seen by a lot of us as one of the finest fighters to have never touched down in the UFC octagon. Of course, his pair of clashes with Eddie Alvarez are nothing short of legendary within the Bellator canon. But for most, and I think this was a warranted or deserved kind of idea, Chandler had shown us who he was by the time his three-time Bellator lightweight champion run had come to its end. And maybe for us it was his age, our familiarity with him, maybe that first round KO loss to Patricio Pitbull. Maybe it was that 2-year stretch that contained 3 straight losses. Maybe these things contributed to us thinking that Chandler had shown us his hand. Back when I worked in the MMA media, I was lucky enough to have the chance to interview Chandler prior to his rematch with Brent Primus, who had stolen away his lightweight title after a well-placed calf kick caused his ankle to give out. And during our chat, and it was a really interesting one that I hold among the most enjoyable interviews I've ever had, Chandler explained how he saw a defining period of his career as the 688-day stretch where he went winless, where 2 losses to Will Brooks, one of them by stoppage, and a defeat to Eddie Alvarez saw him spend close to 2 years without getting his hand raised. He even told me that he wanted to one day name his autobiography 688 Days, because of how much that struggle meant to him, how important it was for him to overcome that slump and emerge stronger on the other side. He also told me that I could have a copy of that very same book whenever he gets around to writing it, so Mr. Chandler, if you are listening, I await that day with great excitement. But it is a real testament to the character of Michael Chandler that he did in fact manage to fight his way right back into the win column, going 3-0 with all finishes to recapture his lightweight crown. And it's not like our expectations were dampened by a truly terrible decline prior to him signing with the UFC. Indeed, he had his bell rung pretty badly by the promotional legend Patricio Pitbull, but by the time the UFC came a-knockin', he had scored back-to-back KO victories, one of which was over Benson Henderson. But he was 34, pushing 35, in a division that tends to move pretty quickly. On a quick side note, if you're enjoying this content and would like to stay up to date with all of our weekly uploads, be sure to subscribe to the channel now to start the campaign for your humble narrator to record the official audiobook for Chandler's upcoming autobiography. It's a match made in heaven, folks. Also, we recently set up a Patreon account, so if you want to help support the channel, the link is in the description. So when Michael Chandler signed in the UFC, in my own head, I saw it as something of a victory lap for a very strong career, a chance for the former Bellator champion to show something of himself on the global stage. What I didn't anticipate was that Michael Chandler would come to the UFC, demand our attention, and become an undeniable fan favorite with some real high-level viability in the process. And look, it hasn't been the perfect run, but there have been more than enough big moments. Enough moments of real danger for his opponents that have seen many of his doubters, many of his early doubters, begin to really give him that seal of approval. It isn't just the action inside the cage either. To those who were unsure of what to expect from Chandler when he first took to the mic, there were some who saw his shtick as somewhat cringy or corny. But as time has gone on, once people started to understand that Michael Chandler is that dude, that hard-working, all-American, mentally bulletproof entertainer, physically gifted as they come, who has committed to stepping his game up for his debut on the global stage, you could really see people start to respect him a whole lot more. We don't love fighters for their ability to win or avoid loss, maybe sometimes, but for most fans, what we value, once technical ability or tactical astuteness are pushed to one side, what it can boil down to, what becomes the magnetic thing, is that drive to really back your words up, to really convey a certain energy in the cage where nothing else really matters. MMA is in some ways show business, and 4 fights into his UFC account, Michael Chandler has shown us what he is willing to put on the table for us. And in fairness, it's actually not just for us. He seems to genuinely want to inhabit a certain space in the MMA world. He is striving for that kind of Gaethje thing, where the love of combat and the desire to bring about chaos means a lot more to you than other external factors. Sometimes those factors boil down to wins and losses. Sometimes they boil down to hundreds of thousands of dollars in win bonuses. In that cage, only Michael Chandler knows how he feels, but I do suspect that he is as driven to entertain as he says he is. And it's not just a case of tucking your chin and throwing bombs, or putting your hands down entirely and walking forward, or slamming yourself backwards in an explosive movement while you're carrying the most dangerous submission specialist in UFC history on your back. But overall, it's the entire picture. This guy is just about as eye-catching a showman as I've seen in some time. And I've always been a Michael Chandler fan. I just didn't expect him to make his time in the UFC count like this. That 2-2 record may not read overly well, but just look at those losses. The instant classic with Justin Gaethje, that explosive and truly shocking back and forth for the lightweight belt against Charles Oliveira. Look, he didn't win UFC gold, instead losing out by way of TKO to the consensus greatest lightweight on the planet. But he did rebound, once again in defeat to Justin Gaethje, in a fight that you can barely call him a loser in. Simply put, I think the UFC run of Michael Chandler has been a resounding success. It's not just that people are really clamoring to see this guy compete, but as far as Chandler himself goes, his own transformation into the UFC superstar we see today has been pretty awesome to behold, especially with the context. He was never a boring fighter, but upon reaching the end of his Bellator contract, he decided to really turn all of his dials up to 10, and that for me, given all of the ups and downs that he has endured, makes his transition to these higher profile fights, these bigger paydays, and the unquestionably more electric results that bit more impressive. I think he deserves the Conor McGregor fight, and while I don't think it's the right move for Conor at this point in time, if he does get in there with the Notorious in the future, it'll be the perfect reward for a long career of sustained excellence. Either way, I'm just excited to see what happens next. But what do you think of Michael Chandler and his explosive 4-fight stretch in the UFC? Do let us know your opinions in the comment section below. We always love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and a comment before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thank you for watching.